job's a joke you broke, your love life's DOA. It's like you're always stuck in second gear, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year. But I'll be there for you when the rain starts to fall. I'll be there for you like I've been there before. I'll be there for you 'cause you're there for me too. You're still in bed at 10 and work again at 8. You burned your breakfast so far, things are going great. Your mother warned you there'd be days like these, but she didn't tell you when the world was brought you down to your knees. That I'll be there for you.
Good morning, delegates. Welcome to the first session of the first committee. The agenda today is set based off the order of precedence, and debate will begin. Quorum will be set at 6. Rapporteur, will you please take roll? Delegates, please be reminded that you will respond with present and voting when called upon.
Chile,
Present and voting.
Mexico, present and voting. Panama,
Present and voting.
Ecuador, present and voting. Canada, Venezuela, present and voting. Haiti, present and voting. Colombia, present and voting. United States,
Present and voting.
Guatemala, present and voting.
Delegates, we have reached quorum and thus can begin the session. At this time, we will begin debate on the resolution presented by the delegation of Ecuador. At this time, will the rapporteur please read the title and resolves?
Acceptance, integration, and protection of refugees and asylum seekers in the Americas. Resolves. 1. To congratulate countries who have adopted the Mexico Plan of Action and reiterate the importance of hemispheric solidarity in the alleviation of the current refugee crisis. 2. To express concern over the continued threat to the political, social, and economic well-being of refugees in the Americas. 3. To reiterate the paramount importance of programs aimed at achieving human security and economic development within receiving communities, while protecting the human rights of refugees in the said communities. 4. To urge all member states to adopt into domestic legislation the expanded definition of the term refugee in accordance with their obligations under the Cartagena Declaration. 5. To establish an inter-American convention for the regional harmonization of refugee law, to convene in Quito, Ecuador in September of 2011, in an effort to increase hemispheric uniformity with regard to domestic refugee law, and to address the issues of the unlawful forced return of refugees, in accordance with international law and the principle of non-refoulement. A. To fund said convention through the general budget of Organization of American States, in addition to the voluntary contributions of member states. B. Call upon the Inter-American Judicial Committee and the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees to oversee the convention and its recommendations. C. Call upon member states to report to the Secretariat for Legal Affairs within 1 year of the conclusion of the convention, with regard to their progress in implementing said recommendations into domestic refugee law. Co-signatories for the resolution are Colombia, Chile, Guatemala, St. Lucia, and Suriname.
Thank you, Rapporteur. At this time, the delegate of Ecuador will have 3 minutes to give a proponent's speech for the resolution.
Thank you. Esteemed Chair, distinguished delegates, as a citizen of the Americas, one cannot ignore the growing crisis with regard to the movement of refugees in the hemisphere. By the end of 2009, it was estimated that over 3 million people were in refugee-like situations in Latin America and the Caribbean alone. While ample military spending has been allocated in hopes of ending the conflicts which have created said refugees, there has been a chronic shortage in humanitarian assistance for these displaced persons. A precarious economic and social situation has resulted, as refugees have been exposed to abject poverty, a lack of educational or economic opportunity, vulnerability to sex trafficking, and little access to health services in their host countries. To make matters worse, prejudice and stigma surrounding refugees in their accepting communities has resulted in their being subjected to violence and discrimination. This shortage of humanitarian assistance in accepting countries has not resulted from a lack of political will, but rather from strained resources and bureaucratic delays. Despite government efforts, the documentation and integration of refugees has posed an economic burden more costly than one country can bear. This resolution proposes that member states make a concerted effort to standardize domestic refugee policy across the region in an effort to diffuse the burden of the acceptance of refugees more evenly throughout the hemisphere. An increase in uniformity would significantly lessen the influx of refugees to individual countries, as well as decrease the likelihood that refugees would be unlawfully returned to their countries of origin. In addition to the moral imperative imposed by the suffering of refugees in the Americas, obligations under the 1984 Cartagena Declaration demand that further actions be taken in this regard. The delegation of Ecuador implores member states to bear in mind legal obligations while considering this resolution and its anticipated effects. And with that, the delegation yields the rest of its time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. At this time, the question and answer period will begin. All those wishing to ask a question, please raise your placard at this time. Delegation of the United States, to what point does the delegate rise?
The delegation of the United States would like to pose a question to the delegation of Ecuador through the chair.
That's an order at this time.
Delegation of the United States is curious how this resolution, this delegate, would be achieving, how this resolution achieves its goals without infringing on state sovereignty.
Thank you, Delegate. Does the delegate of Ecuador understand the question and wish to respond at this time?
Yes. The delegation of Ecuador would like to state its belief that this is not an infringement on state sovereignty because it is merely enforcing with greater efficacy that to which member states have already agreed to under international legal agreements.
Delegation of the United States, has the delegation of Ecuador answered your question?
Permission to pose a follow-up question, Madam Chair.
That's an order at this time.
Does the delegation from the United States would further like to know, does the delegation of Ecuador think that the reason this hasn't worked up to this point is that it would have had detrimental effects on a country's economic or cohesive situation?
Point of order, Delegate. That's a leading question. That's not in order at this time. At this time, are there any other questions on the floor? Delegation of Chile, to what point does the delegate rise?
The delegation of Chile would like to pose a question to the delegate from Ecuador through the chair.
That's an order at this time.
The delegation of Chile would like to know if this definition includes refugees that have been created due to natural disasters.
Does the delegate of Ecuador understand the question and wish to respond at this time?
Yes. The delegate believes that this resolution would apply to those who have been displaced due to natural disasters, as the Cartagena Declaration states that a refugee is defined as persons who have fled their country because their lives, safety, or freedom have been threatened by generalized violence, foreign aggression, internal conflicts, massive violation of human rights, or other circumstances which have seriously disturbed public order. And natural disasters, this delegate believes, falls under the category of another circumstance which has seriously disturbed public order.
Delegate from Chile, did the delegate from Ecuador answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
At this time, the question and answer period has been exhausted. Are there any objections to passing the resolution by unanimous consent? Seeing some, are there any motions on the floor? Delegation of Panama, to what point does the delegate rise?
Motion for a moderated caucus, 2 minutes with 30 seconds speaking time.
Are there any seconds? Any objections? Seeing none, we'll now move into a moderated caucus of 2 minutes with 30 seconds speaking time. All those wishing to speak, please raise your placard. Delegate of Panama.
Delegation of Panama would like to congratulate the delegation of Ecuador for such an interesting resolution. However, the delegate would like to state that this could place an unfair burden on countries who have geographic proximity to the countries of origin of a large number of refugees. The delegate yields the rest of his time back to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate of Venezuela.
Thank you, Chair. The delegate would just like to echo the sentiments made by the delegate of Panama and commend the spirit of the resolution, but cannot help to believe that this resolution poses a severe threat to a country's national sovereignty. The delegate would like to point out that Venezuela is not a signatory to the 1951 UN Convention relating to the status of refugees, which emphasizes the state's desire to remain autonomous on these affairs. particularly when considering that each member state here today faces extremely unique refugee problems, and the delegate yields the remainder of its time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate from Ecuador?
The delegate of Ecuador would like to express that many states bordering conflicts are already faced with an unfair burden due to discrepancies in national refugee law, which this resolution seeks to address.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate from Guatemala?
The delegation of Guatemala would like to express support for this resolution and reiterate the points presented by the delegate from Ecuador. The precarious position of refugees in the Americas is a pressing issue that threatens the political, social, and economic well-being of all member states, and is a crisis worthy of proper consideration. The delegate urges fellow delegates to adopt the definition of refugee as proposed in the Cartagena Declaration as a gesture of solidarity and dedication to the protection of displaced persons. And with that, the delegate yields the remainder of its time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. At this time, we'll now move to the creation of the speakers list. All those wishing to speak in favor of the resolution, please raise your placard at this time. Delegation of Colombia? Delegation of Chile? At this time, all those wishing to speak against, please raise your placard at this time. Delegation of the United States? Delegation of Haiti? At this time,
Madam Chair, the delegation of Chile would like to recognize that the delegation of Canada is here with the power of voice only.
are there any seconds? Any objections? Seeing none, the delegation of Canada has been recognized with voice but no vote. At this time, the delegation of Colombia will have 2 minutes to speak in favor of the resolution.
The delegation of Colombia would like to speak in favor of this resolution. The delegation would like to reiterate the importance of human security and human rights that this resolution seeks to protect. Delegates, as mentioned in the proponent's speech, the crisis of the movement of refugees in the hemisphere cannot be ignored, and it is important that humanitarian assistance be provided to promote solidarity. The delegation of Colombia would like to thank the delegation of Ecuador for bringing this to the forefront and urges all other delegations to vote in favor of this resolution. The delegation of Colombia yields the rest of its time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. At this time, the delegate from Haiti will have 2 minutes to speak against the resolution.
The delegation of Haiti would like to yield to the amendment to the chair.
That's an order at this time. At this time, the amendment has been passed for form and substance. Will the rapporteur please read the amendment?
Amendment from the delegation of Haiti to amend clause number 4 to read, to urge all member states to adopt into domestic legislation the expanded definition of the term refugee in accordance with their obligations under the Cartagena Declaration by January 2013.
Thank you, Rapporteur. At this time, the delegation of Haiti will have 2 minutes to give a proponent's speech for the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The delegation of Haiti would like to begin by applauding the delegation of Ecuador on their well-thought-out resolution. The delegation of Haiti would like to remind all delegates, however, that this problem is present in the hemisphere here and now and must be addressed with the utmost speed and urgency. For this reason, the delegation of Haiti believes states should commit to making these changes by 2013 so that all countries may bear the burden of refugees, but also, more importantly, so that those most vulnerable in our hemisphere may be granted more options in a more timely fashion through our commitment to a timeline in enacting this resolution. Therefore, the delegation of Haiti strongly urges all member states to vote in favor of this amendment as well as this resolution. The delegation of Haiti yields the remainder of its time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. At this time, we'll now move to the creation of a speakers list. All those wishing to speak in favor of the amendment, please raise your placard at this time. Chile? Mexico? All those wishing to speak against the amendment, please raise your placard at this time. Venezuela? Panama? At this time, the delegation of Chile will have 1 minute to speak in favor of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The delegation of Chile would like to thank the delegate from Haiti for their well-thought-out and enthusiastic presentation of their amendment. The delegate of Chile believes this amendment is imperative for all delegates to adopt and benefits all members of the hemisphere by placing a deadline on this resolution. Such a deadline will ensure compliance with such a beneficial resolution for all member states and address the problem raised in the proponent's speech by the delegation of Ecuador, seeing that there is a problem with bureaucratic delays in the hemisphere when addressing such issues. Thank you, and with that, the delegation from Chile yields the remainder of its time to the chair.
Thank you, delegate. At this time, the delegation of Venezuela will have 1 minute to speak against the amendment.
Thank you, Chair. The delegate would just like to re-emphasize that the standardization of hemispheric laws pose a threat to autonomous member states present today. Moreover, the standardization of refugee law poses a unique threat to Venezuela, which already shares a disproportionate burden of refugees from nearby border disputes. The delegate urges member states to consider the long-term implications of this amendment, which will only lead to a greater inundation of refugees into member states. Moreover, the delegate believes that a deadline, which allows a little less than 2 years for countries to amend their national laws, will only exacerbate this issue. And the delegate yields the remainder of its time to the chair.
Thank you, delegate. At this time, the delegation of Mexico will have 1 minute to speak against the amendment.
In the spirit of diplomacy, the delegate of Mexico yields the remainder of its time back to the chair.
Thank you, delegate, for your diplomacy. At this time, the delegation of Panama will have 1 minute to speak against the amendment.
The delegation of Panama would like to echo the sentiments of the delegation of Venezuela, and again would like to state that despite this amendment, this resolution still places an unfair burden on some nations that are geographically situated near areas where large numbers of refugees come from. Either way, the delegation of Panama is unable to vote for this resolution.
Thank you, delegate. At this time, the speakers list has been exhausted. Are there any objections to pass the amendment by unanimous consent? Seeing objections, we will now move into a placard vote for the amendment. All those voting in favor of the amendment, please raise your placard at this time. At this time, all those voting against the amendment, please raise your placard at this time. With a vote of 7 against and 2 in favor, the amendment is not passed. At this time, we'll continue the speakers list, and the delegation of Haiti now has 2 minutes to speak against the unamended resolution.
The delegation of Haiti would like to urge all member states to vote in favor of this resolution, as the delegation of Haiti plans to do, despite the fact that there is no timeline. The delegation of Haiti believes that even without a strict timeline, all member states should vote in favor and act with utmost urgency in order to implement this resolution. With that, the delegation of Haiti yields the remainder of its time to the chair.
Thank you, delegate. At this time, the delegation of Chile will have 2 minutes to speak in favor of the unamended resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Despite the amendment being voted down, the delegation of Chile still believes it is a very worthy resolution and that all states should pass such a resolution, as it addresses a looming crisis in our hemisphere. Failure to do so would only result in future problems for all member states, and thus it should be passed by all member states present here today. Thank you, and with that, the delegation of Chile yields the remainder of its time to the chair.
Thank you, delegate. At this time, the delegation from the United States will have 2 minutes to speak against the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The delegation of the United States is concerned about this resolution and the current state of our organization's funding. This organization does not have the money at this time to help member states that cannot afford to comply with this resolution. The United States, being one of the organization's highest funded member states, does not believe that this resolution is fair to member states that already bear the burden of large numbers of refugees coming into their countries. And with that, the United States yields the remainder of its time to the chair.
Thank you, delegate. At this time, the speakers list has been exhausted. Are there any motions on the floor? Delegation of Mexico, to appoint as the delegate rise.
Motion for roll call vote?
As an order at this time. Rapporteur, will you please read the roll?
Chile,
Yes.
Mexico,
Pass.
Panama,
No.
Ecuador,
Yes.
Venezuela,
No.
Haiti,
Yes.
Colombia,
Yes.
United States,
No.
Guatemala,
Yes.
Mexico,
Abstain.
At this time, with a vote of 5 in favor, 3 opposed, and 1 abstention, congratulations, delegate. The resolution is passed. At this time, the delegation of Mexico will have 2 minutes to explain its abstention.
The delegate of Mexico must abstain due to a conflict of interest.
Thank you, delegate. At this time, are there any motions on the floor? Delegation of Haiti to appoint as the delegate rise.
The delegation of Haiti would like to motion for a 2-minute unmoderated caucus.
Any seconds? Any objections? Seeing none, we'll now move into a 2-minute unmoderated topic.